the remarkable thing is that in Abu Dhabi in particular, but more broadly, the UAE and Bahrain and now emerging Saudi Arabia, you have a model for the Middle East, a constructive model, a model that's not quite there with human rights, is not quite there with governance and democracy, but is going in the right direction. And unlike prior models, like, say, Egypt under Gamal Abdel Nasser or Iraq under Saddam Hussein, this is a constructive one. So this is a piece of good news, and you picked it up. It is something that is going in the right direction.
Well, I no longer value the opinion of the Nobel Prize Committee. Can you imagine giving the Nobel Peace Prize to Barack Obama? Before he even took office, he was nominated and won, whereas Donald Trump in his first term as president actually managed to cut the Gordian knot and through his Abraham Accords forged a meaningful peace between Israel and several of its neighbors, the first time that was done in a generation. And it was in a lasting way. You might remember the Rebel News actually went on a journey. We started in Israel and went to the United Arab Emirates. We were skeptics, but we were convinced this is a real and lasting peace. It was strained, it was stressed during the Biden administration, and clearly the Hamas attack on Israel was designed even more to derail it. But Trump is back, and hopefully the success of the Abraham Accords can be built upon. Trump just visited the region, including the various countries, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Qatar. Joining us now to talk about this are our experts on the subject, our friends of the Middle East Forum. We're joined by Dr. Daniel Pipes and Ben Baird, who will be introduced to in a minute. Dr. Pipes, let's start with you. First of all, thanks for taking the time with us today. What do you make about visiting Qatar and Saudi Arabia and the UAE? I sort of was of the view that Qatar was at odds with the other two parts of that meeting. What was the purpose of the meeting? Was it a success? What are the possibilities? What's cooking is what I'm asking.
Well, as ever with Donald Trump, wherever he goes, he makes news and he surprises us. The goal was in large part to get deals done. And the numbers being tossed around are absolutely gigantic. I don't know how real they are, but one hears figures like $4 trillion US, which is like twice the Canadian GDP. Just astonishingly large numbers. What are not talked about are national security interests. What are not talked about are human rights. What is talked about is these vast numbers. Now, clearly, the rich strongmen of the Middle East understand that this is the sort of thing that attracts the American president. And so they have focused on that and have apparently delivered. So if you're looking for deals, this was the trip. There's never been one like it.
Well, in terms of business deals, and Trump is certainly, that's one of the ways he's trying to prove his success. He's done that with Asian investors as well on semiconductors
Right.
and things of that sort. And that's very important. That is a meat and potato issue. I would put it to you that more Americans care about trade and jobs and industry than care about foreign policy, which can sometimes seem abstract. But I think you and I care about foreign policy for a host of reasons. Did this realign things? I sense there's a little bit of tension between Donald Trump and Israel, or at least Benjamin Netanyahu these days. It's hard to read. Putting aside the huge business deals, was there any movement on peace or moving forward with the Abraham Accords, which was so hopeful in the first term of the president?
Well, Mr. Trump made it clear that the Saudis will join the Abraham Accords at their convenience, which I take as coded language for when the King Salman, dies. Rather, I think the emphasis was on support for Islamists. First in Syria, a group has come to power that is looked over the 5 months since December has looked very bad, but yet now the United States is working to help them consolidate power. And secondly, Iran. It looks like, now there are contradictory signals coming from the administration, but it looks like something along the lines of the 2015 Iran deal are now being discussed with the leaders in Tehran. So if there is an overarching theme besides making deals, it is getting to be more at ease with the Islamists in Syria and Iran and Qatar, all three.
I was astonished to see the president meet with the new leader of Syria, who short years ago, I don't even if it was years ago, was on a most wanted poster. I think there was a $10 million bounty for him. I suppose he wants Syria in his orbit as opposed to the Russian orbit, which it was before. Let's talk about one of the countries that Trump visited, namely Qatar. Ben Baird, you are the director of Middle East Forum Action. You're also the author of a new study called America for Sale, Qatar's $40 billion spending spree buys influence and control of elite institutions. Tell me a little bit about Qatar. I think everyone's heard the name. Maybe they've heard of the airline or some of the sports teams they sponsored. But in terms of the number of citizens, it's a small city, really. I mean, Doha is the capital. Most of the people there are foreign, workers. Give us just a little bit of briefing on Qatar, who they are and where they fit in, because they have an outsized influence considering how small they are. Am I right?
That's right. You're talking about a country in Qatar that has a population of Qataris who are about equal to the size of Wyoming. So it's not a very large country at all, but they have outsized wealth, outsized influence, not only throughout the region, but throughout the world. And as our study showed, influence even here in the United States. This is a gas-rich country that is using its petrodollars and not always for the right reasons.
And that's what confused me about it, because I had thought that there was sort of a taking of sides, that the Saudis and the UAE and Bahrain were worried about Iran, and Qatar was sort of on the side of the bad guys. But I always thought that Qatar was the host of Hamas. They were the financiers of terrorism. They were the radical ones, even as the Saudis sort of trim their sails on radicalism and become more Western oriented. Are the Qataris today what they were 5 years ago? Are they the financiers of Hamas? Will they continue down that path, or will they reform themselves?
There doesn't appear to be any evidence that there's any type of reform going on. They like to occupy both camps by making outreach to the West while at the same time supporting Islamists and supporting Islamist ideologies through Al Jazeera, their media conglomerate. And they do this, they win over the West through a charm offensive, which our study found $40 billion across numerous American financial sectors. We're talking about universities, K through 12, businesses, private equity firms, hedge funds, real estate trophy properties. Qatar is deeply invested in America, even in our critical infrastructure. As we seek energy independence from the Middle East, we are outsourcing our domestic energy supplies to Qatar, to a Persian Gulf state that does not have America's best interests in mind.
I found it one of the strangest things of the last week or two was the announcement by President Trump that he was going to accept a gift of a jet, a Boeing 747 from Qatar. I think it was Qatar. Now that I'm saying that, I'm astonished. Could it be true? No. And all I can think of is a flying Trojan horse. I mean, Trump claims the gift it's legal and it's ethical. That's not even what I'm interested in. To accept such a key strategic asset from, at best, a rival, more likely an enemy. The first thing I thought of was when the U.S. embassy in Moscow was being built, and how the Russian laborers put hundreds of listening devices in the construction of the new embassy so that it was rendered non-usable. Like, why would you allow such a key piece of critical security infrastructure? I mean, that was just one thought. But even if that's secure, why are you taking foreign aid from Qatar? And that felt very... Well, let me put it this way. It didn't feel very America first. What do you think of that, Dr. Pipes?
I'm in complete agreement. But as I mentioned earlier, the rich strongmen of the Middle East, of the Persian Gulf, understand this and understand Trump's desire to have glamour, to have deals, to have economic success, and they pander to it. And this proposed Air Force One is the most striking example of it. And what is also striking is that it is arousing a rare opposition among Republican politicians who have taken a lot and who've gone contrary to their historic principles. But on this one, they're saying, no, this is going too far. It's not that important, but it is symbolic, and perhaps it'll suggest that there is a willingness among the Republican members of Congress and senators to say no once in a while to the excesses of the administration.
The UAE, and that's the United Arab Emirates. We visited there a few years ago. I was impressed. What can I say? I went in a skeptic, but to me, it was a real beacon of hope. Their foreign minister told Brett Baird that the future he sees for Gaza is one that has no role for Hamas. And I found that bracing because I live in a country whose foreign minister would never say anything like that. Our foreign minister just a couple of days ago denounced Israel as basically committing a genocide. I think this same UAE foreign minister has in the past said that the West has to control its Islamist problem. I didn't see any anti-Semitism. I didn't see any Islamism when I visited the country, even though we were there for less than a week. You can get a feel for the place pretty quickly. Is that the future of the Middle East? That sort of progressive post-conflict, post-terrorist, post-Palestinian Middle East? Or let me just ask you about Gaza. Is that the center of everything, or is business in Dubai the center of everything now?
Well, the remarkable thing is that in Abu Dhabi in particular, but more broadly, the UAE and Bahrain and now emerging Saudi Arabia, you have a model with the Middle East, a constructive model, a model that's not quite there with human rights, is not quite there with governance and democracy, but is going in the right direction. And unlike prior models, like, say, Egypt under Gamal Abdel Nasser or Iraq under Saddam Hussein, this is a constructive one. So this is a piece of good news, and you picked it up. It is something that is going in the right direction. And there are reasonable hopes that there will be better governance, there will be more human rights, there will be more values that we consider important applied in the Persian Gulf and more broadly in the Middle East.
I got one last question for you, Dr. Pipes. And Ben, by the way, it's great to meet you, and we'll look forward to seeing studies from you in the future. Dr. Pipes, I saw that Benjamin Netanyahu floated the idea of no longer taking foreign aid from the United States. And I've always thought that taking foreign aid was a bad idea because I think Israel can afford its own military. I think it's a talking point against Israel that it's on the dole, even though other countries get much. I mean, if you look at the cost that the United States spends annually on its military bases in, for example, Germany, 50,000 troops and 40 bases, it's an astonishing cost that you wouldn't normally attribute to foreign aid. But let's put all that aside. It made Israel vulnerable to U.S. demands because it was, where's the quid pro quo? We're giving you billions of dollars. Yep. You better do this, this, and that. And I felt that really hamstringed Israel's response to Hamas. What's the situation there? Because I see that Israel is ramping up its actions in Gaza again. Netanyahu's floating the idea of getting off the U.S. dole. What's cooking there?
Well, once again, Ezra, you and I are in agreement. Actually, Netanyahu has been alluding to this for a long time. Back in his first term as prime minister in the late 1990s, he talked about this. However, the pressures to accept American money, to go for American military aid, have always been stronger than this reluctance on his part. Perhaps now it is a turning point, now that the United States, even under so friendly a president as Donald Trump, has proven difficult to predict, difficult to work with. It could be the Israelis finally to decide to make the break and to pay for their own military. They did make the break on economic aid. That's long gone. Maybe now they'll make the break when it comes to military aid as well. And I think that's good for everyone, good for both sides, both Israel and the United States, and this economic dependency, be an independent country.
Yeah, very interesting times. You know, one thing I learned, I'll just close with this thought. I was talking to our friend Joel Pollack at Breitbart.com about Donald Trump and his, I thought, inexplicable preference for the Liberal Party in Canada's election. I think Trump really did throw the election to the Liberals. And I didn't understand that. Why would he eschew the conservative here, who is much more similar to Trump, is conservative, has the same views on a host of issues? And Joel said, Trump is America first. He's not Canada first or Israel first. And Joel's explanation was he thought Trump preferred, for whatever reason, to deal with a liberal. And I think that maybe that's a mistake that the people who care about Israel make also, is that Trump supports Israel. Of course he does. But at the end of the day, if he's making deals in the Middle East, it'll be Trump's deals. It'll be America first. And that may not always be a solution that Israel prefers, just like I think what Trump helped put Canada into is not ideal for us. And I say this as Canada's noisiest Trump supporter. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but I think, Netanyahu has a friend in the White House much more than Kamala Harris or Joe Biden. But Trump is his own man and he has his own course, and it's not the same as Israel's course.
That's absolutely true. And you probably should add Australia, because the elections in Australia, which followed those in Canada, were almost an exact repetition. So Canada was not an outlier. It was consistent with Trump's disdain, as it were, for conservatives in fellow democracies. Very, very not expected and upsetting.
Yeah, well, I think it set Canada back, but hopefully we'll persevere. Listen, it's great to catch up with you guys. Thanks very much for both of you for joining us today, and we'll keep following along at the Middle East Forum, meforum.org. Thanks, you guys. Have a great weekend.